Hi everyone. Today we are talking to Peter Verkoulen, Managing Director of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Uh, Tell us a little bit about the Dutch Blockchain Coalition and the work that you do in the blockchain ecosystem.
Yeah, the Dutch blockchain coalition is actually a triple helix system, as we sometimes call it. So, an ecosystem of public organizations, private companies, and also knowledge institutes. I think we are about 40 at the moment. It started in 2017, so a little bit over 3 years ago. And let's say our mission statement or our mission document is titled Blockchain for Good. So we are working to have, let's say, blockchain solutions adopted in society and solve societal problems. We do that by working on a number of what we call use cases, for instance, in human resource management or in public administration or in international logistics. And let's say those use cases are supported by a number of, let's say, working groups. We have a very active human capital agenda working group. We have some supporting working groups like on legal, on privacy topics, or on tokenization. And yeah, this ecosystem of organizations and companies in those various lines of working, yeah, bring the Dutch ecosystem step by step a little bit further, and also, of course, in an international setting, because yeah, we are only a small country in the Netherlands, so definitely we also want to work together in an international context.
It's interesting you say that because that leads me right to this next question that I have. What do you think is the biggest obstacle for widespread mainstream adoption of blockchain and DLT technologies and applications?
Yeah, I would say I think legislation is one of the biggest obstacles. We see this in almost all the use cases that we are running. I would say directly or indirectly. Directly, if there's just, let's say, some legislation in a specific application. Let me give an example. We are working on the so-called bill of lading. That's a document that is vital in international container transport. And the law just says that it has to be a paper document, and that paper document at any time shows, let's say, who is the owner of the cargo. So if you want to make via blockchain technology an electronic bill of lading, yeah, then you have to change that specific legislation. And there's also, let's say, indirect problems. I mean, if you have use cases where you need public data, and that's probably in almost all of the cases, then there's always the question, well, can, let's say, public data also really be used for this purpose? And that in almost all cases also means that something has to be changed in legislations or regulations. So I think that that's an important part. And maybe the other thing is, let's say, yeah, a large scale acceptance and adoption of blockchain technology in general, and to, let's say, demystify it and disconnect it from the idea that it's just Bitcoin and it's a little, let's say, mystic, so to say, yeah, go to mainstream technology. So I think that that's the second element.
Okay, so that is actually a question that I'd like to lead because you touched upon a number of topics that are blocking mainstream technology. But what do you believe the blockchain ecosystem should specifically address to overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, so if you look at let's say the legislation part, I think that it's very important to have an active involvement of the public, the governmental organizations in blockchain ecosystems, and that's actually what we are doing also in the Netherlands. So the public administration is very active in the ecosystem. It's not that they provide us with some subsidy and they have a number of KPIs, and let's say they check twice a year where we are with realizing their KPIs, but they are really actively involved in all the use cases and all the work that we do. And so then we can get to a kind of correctness by design. And we don't only use work on the let's say on the technology solution, but also in the meantime look at what has to be done on the legislation side. So I think that active involvement and also working together and making sure that you understand one another and speak one another's language is very important. And I think that also relates to the second element, the large scale adoption or acceptance. I think that working transparently in those use cases, but also focus more on, let's say, societal value and not so much focus on, let's say, the technology aspects in your communication. I think that's very important. Yeah, also for the general public to appreciate the new possibilities that this technology provides.
Lovely. So where do you see the worldwide industry in like 10 years from now? Do you think it's going to be better, worse?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, well, 10 years is of course a long term ahead, and in the digital arena, everything goes 7 times faster than in the real world. So that we are looking now even 70 years ahead with this question. And I don't have this crystal ball, but let's say my hope would indeed be that this has become a mature, widespread, and also widely accepted technology, and also really changed, let's say, the status quo. And the status quo, especially, I would say, as an individual, the status quo with respect to my digital presence. So I want to get in control of my data, of who I am in the digital world. Again, myself, I want to decide, who can do what with my data, and why and how long. Yeah, instead of, let's say, the current situation where much of that is with, let's say, the big tech platforms. So that would be my hope for the next few years, that we would work on and that we would achieve.
Okay, lovely. Because you did touch upon something that I want to ask you as well. So, what use cases are you the most excited about coming online over the next 2 or 3 years? Uh, 10 years might be too far away, but the next 2 years might be something that is easily understandable and
Yeah,
predicted.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, I think on a more, let's say, abstract level, I would say that, let's say, decentralized, what we call decentralized digital identity, or sometimes also self-sovereign identity, is something that we want to get implemented in the next few years. There's a lot of action going on in the Netherlands, but obviously also on the European level with the ESIF initiative. So I think that's the most important one. And attached to this, there are, let's say, numerous specific applications. I mean, in the Netherlands, we're working on things like career wallet, so where you can share your HR credentials and prove that you have gone through some training or have built some experience, etc. We are working on, for instance, what I just said already, the electronic bill of lading, where, of course, digital identity, but then of goods is also important. So this decentralized digital identity comes back more or less in everything that we're doing, so to say.
Okay, lovely. Um, I know that this seems to be a repeating question, but which projects that are you working on with the Dutch Blockchain Coalition do you think will improve major systems of service? We've touched upon the bills of lading, but are there something else that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, so let's say again, I would say the main element is this work on decentralized digital identity, where also the government is working actively and realizing that they have to provide a so-called let's say foundational identity that people can use to act both on the public side of the internet as also on the private side, so to say. I mentioned already a number of specific use cases. I won't repeat them again, but we are working on some other examples. One of them is what we call Unlock. That's put shortly, an application, also an SSI application, where you can prove a negative corona test in this case, and maybe in the future a vaccination proof, and you can use that to get entrance to a factory or entrance to a hospital or stuff like that without showing more than what has to be shown from you, just the fact that you have tested negatively. So that's a very interesting and also, I would say, actual case that we're working on. And another case that's also interesting to show again the active involvement of the public, the government, the public organizations, that's called compliance by design, and that has to do with, let's say, let's call it automatic subsidy allocation. So you get a subsidy, for instance, for the fact that you have put solar panels on your roof, or for some other reason. And what you don't want is, let's say, a manual check afterwards whether you have met the criteria. But what you would like is, if you have met the criteria, then automatically you get paid the subsidy. And well, if I put it like that, then somebody who knows a bit about blockchain hears immediately smart contracts. So this is really also a very interesting case around smart contracts. So I think that that's the main examples that we're working on. But in the Dutch ecosystem, on a broader sense, there is much more going on. And also in those cases that are not, let's say, Dutch blockchain coalition cases in a smaller sense of the world, in a narrow sense of the world, so to say, we still try also to support those cases if they have specific needs, or they say, well, can you connect me to a governmental agency or to another company or whatever. So also that those use cases you want to bring them, we want to bring them further.
I understand. Thank you. So for our last question, which is circling back to INATBA, what role do you think INATBA plays in the global blockchain ecosystem?
Yeah, well, obviously, INATBA is a European platform, let's say, focusing on private partners. I think focused especially in the initial phase on dialogue, on connecting organizations. And I think that's not really your question, but now I'm here anyway. I think that the next step to, let's say, to intensify that could also be to become more activistic. I don't know whether that's a real English word, but let's say to go a step further beyond, let's say, connecting and dialogue and discussion, and go to, let's say, active interaction with the organizations that are part of INATMA, but obviously also on the public side, the European Union and other governmental agencies. Because when I was saying let's say the active role of the Dutch government that we see, I think that that's not the case everywhere in the world. So that's also I think something where organizations like INATBA could also add value to activate it in those countries.
I understand. Thank you for the answer. Again, this was Peter Verkoulen, Managing Director of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. Peter, thank you again for joining us. It was a pleasure talking to you. And thank you so much. Bye bye.